Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So today's lesson in Year 7, what we're going to be doing is taking the knowledge and understanding that we've done previously on the introduction to the Three Gorges Dam project, and we're going to be taking it to the next level, and we're going to be looking at the advantages of the Three Gorges Dam project. Now, at the end of this, what we're going to be doing is building into a question which is going to need to look at the advantages and the disadvantages of the project in order for you guys to be able to draw conclusions. And believe it or not, what we're doing is we're building in the types of skills that you guys are going to need by the time you get to GCSE, and they're the types of skills that you will need to be able to answer some of those longer 9-mark questions. So we're going to set the challenge bar really high, and hopefully we're going to smash through it. You may have noticed that my hair is looking a little bit strange at the moment. Obviously, I've not been able to get a haircut for the last 7 weeks, so my fringe has grown back. So if you don't recognize me, it's Mr. Kilvert. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to present my screen. I'm going to present my screen so that I can guide you through the work that we're going to be doing during today's lesson. There will be some points during today's lesson where I'll ask you to either pause the video so that you can complete a task, or I'll pop timers up there for you to be able to get some bits and bobs done. Now, the work that you're going to be doing during today's lesson is going to occur in 2 phases. So if you've looked at the task list on Google Classrooms, the first task would have been the completion of a Google form. Now, that Google form is designed to reconnect and recap some of the knowledge and understanding from last lesson. So what I'll be able to do is to collect all of the data that goes into that Google form, and I'll be able to check your knowledge and understanding, and hopefully I'll be able to provide you all with a bit of feedback, either via the form or through some whole class feedback, which we'll do at a later date. So we've looked at the Three Gorges Dam. We know what it is. Okay, so just to recap from that previous lesson, we're looking at the largest dam in the world. We're looking at a dam in China on the river Yangtze, okay, which is actually the longest river in Asia, interestingly enough. We know that this dam project, okay, is there and it can produce vast amounts of energy and electricity, but we also know that it can control flooding, okay, and those are the 2 things that we focused on from last lesson. Now, that knowledge from last lesson is going to link in really nicely with what we're looking at today, because today we're going to look at the advantages of the Three Gorges Dam. So in other words, what are the good things about this particular project? Okay. Now, I'm conscious that I'm not going to keep this bias as we move on to our second lesson, because there are some disadvantages to this project. It's really important that we keep a balance of arguments, because if we don't keep a balance of arguments, essentially we're not doing our jobs as geographers. So the target question that I want you guys to answer, and you're going to answer it towards the end of this lesson, is what are the social and economic advantages of the Three Gorges Dam? Now, in order for us to be able to do that, I've got 2 things within the success criteria. We need to be able to explain the difference between social and economic. And actually, I'm going to throw a third one in there as well. I'm going to throw in environmental. And then what we need to do is we need to work out what those social, economic, and environmental advantages are to the project. And then we're going to use connectives, okay? And we've talked about connectives an awful lot this academic year. We've talked about how we can use connectives in order to develop our explanations. But then what we're going to do is we're going to use our knowledge of social, economic, and environmental to be able to place things into certain categories. So the first thing that we need to cover then is what is the difference between a social impact and an economic impact. Now, in order for me to do this, what I did was I simply went onto Google. Other search engines are available. I went to Google Images and I typed in the word social. When I typed in the word social, one of the first images that popped up is this image that I'm just circling here with my mouse cursor. Now, it's pretty obvious when you look at the picture that what you can see in that image is tons of people. And that's exactly what that word social means. If we're talking about a social impact, we're talking about how it impacts upon people, okay? Now, I did exactly the same for economic, and I put economic into a search engine. What it came up with was this little graphic that you can see here. Now, you'll recognize these symbols. This one down here, you should definitely recognize. That's a symbol for pound sterling. We've also got the symbol for a euro up here. We've got the dollar sign in the middle, and we've got some yen over here, okay? Pretty obvious from that what economic is all about. Economic is all about money, okay? So the social impacts are the impacts upon people. The economic impacts are the impacts upon money. Now, the third category that I want to throw into there is the impacts upon the environment, okay? And I've put it here in this table, which I'll come to in a moment. When we talk about the environmental impacts, what we're talking about is the impact upon nature, okay? Now, this particular project will have all 3. It will have advantages socially, so for people. It will have advantages economically for money. They'll also have environmental advantages in terms of nature. So what I would like you guys to do now is I'm going to put that 2-minute countdown timer on that's in the corner of the screen. I want you to just jot down for me in a Google document, which you're going to submit via Google Classrooms as part of this work, what we mean by a social impact and what we mean by an economic impact. Okay, so open yourself up a Google document now if you haven't done so already. I'm going to pop the timer on for 2 minutes, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes to just jot down a definition of what a social impact is and what an economic impact is. And if you want to go further, give me that definition of what an environmental impact is at the same time. Let's go. Okay, excellent stuff, guys. Time's up. Now, one thing that I didn't mention when I talked about social, meaning people, economic, meaning money, and environmental, meaning the environment, is that when it comes to categorizing impacts and effects, sometimes there's a crossover between the two. So you get impacts that are quite often social impacts, but that are also economic impacts. Okay, that's absolutely fine. Nothing is clear cut. It's really difficult to be able to put things into distinct categories. Okay, that will become clearer as we start to develop during today's lesson. So what I'd like you to do now is within your Google document that you guys have just been working on, just see if you can create a quick table for me that says social advantages, economic advantages, and environmental advantages. Okay, shouldn't take you too long to do that. If you need a bit of time to make sure that you can get that done, what I'd ask you to do is to just click pause on the video now, set yourself up that table, and then click play when you're ready to go. Okay, brilliant. Hopefully you're at the stage now where you've got that table set up. What we're going to do is we're going to go through a series of different advantages for this particular project. Once we've gone through the advantages, what I'm going to do is set you guys a task, and that task is going to be for you to be able to sort and organize each of the different advantages into those different categories: social, economic, and environmental. So the first advantage, and we know this from looking at it last lesson, is that actually what we can do is we can control the risk of flooding. We can control the risk of flooding by using those floodgates to be able to control the flow of water going through the dam. Now, if we're able to do that, one of the big advantages is that the flood risk for homes further down the Yangtze River is massively reduced. Okay. Now, one of the things that I've talked about is being able to use connectives to be able to explain things. Well, here is my use of connectives. I've said in the long term, this will mean that. So if we can reduce the flood risk further down the River Yangtze, In the long term, that means that disruption to day-to-day lives with homes and businesses being destroyed is minimized, okay? Now, that has huge impacts on people because it's people's lives that get affected when you have a flood, but it also has huge impacts upon the economy. And it has huge impacts on the economy because when homes get destroyed, when businesses get destroyed, you know, there's a certain cost attached to being able to rebuild and to be able to repair after disasters like that. The second one that I want to come to is one that we also covered a little bit last lesson, which was hydroelectric power. So remember, hydroelectric power is created, and if we've got the world's largest dam, we're going to get a truck ton full of energy from this hydroelectric power plant. So hydroelectric power is a renewable energy source. It means it doesn't run out and it doesn't add large amounts of CO2 to the atmosphere. So actually, potentially, what we've got there is an environmental advantage. Because if it's not adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, it's not adding to the enhanced greenhouse effect, and it's not adding to those processes of global warming that we hear about on the news all the time. This particular dam has a huge capacity, and it is the largest hydroelectric dam in the world, and it actually holds the joint record for producing the most amount of energy over the course of a year. I'm sure that as we move into the future, it will start to smash those records. To put it into perspective, this dam produces around about 200 times more energy and power than the Hoover Dam in the United States of America. The other advantage is from river navigation. Now, I've been fascinated by this, but I'm a little bit of a geek. And what it's got is it's got these big lifts, which essentially lift boats up and down, allowing them to pass through the dam on the Yangtze River. Absolutely amazing. There's a picture of it there. I haven't put a video into it in YouTube. If you go into YouTube and you just type in river lifts on the River Yangtze, you can just see how amazing that process is. I don't know, maybe you guys won't find it amazing, but I do, okay? But the advantage of that is it makes it more navigable. What that means is we can get boats up and down the River Yangtze really easy. Now, that has an advantage, and that advantage is that it's great for being able to trade and transport goods all the way across China. So from my perspective, that's a massive economic advantage, okay? That's great for business, it's great for China, and it's great for the people being able to receive goods and to be able to trade and to be able to generate money. So we've got a huge economic advantage there. Another economic advantage, which also crosses over into the social advantages, is that thousands of jobs are created. Now, thousands of jobs are created in the construction and the building of the dam, but there are also long-term jobs with this as well. You know, we need people to be able to run the dam. We need people to be able to repair the dam. And actually, it's created a whole nother industry because there are lots of geeks out there like me that like to look at huge infrastructure projects, and it's actually become a tourist attraction. You saw that in the video last lesson when you saw that Belgian guy that was a student that was going around interviewing people. The people that he were interviewing were tourists that were there to go and see the dam, to see the largest dam in the world. And that also creates jobs, and it generates income, and it generates revenue. Okay, so that's one thing that's really, really important. And again, it's economic because jobs is primarily about money, but it's also social. And the reason why it's also social is because if people have got jobs, then obviously that improves their lifestyles. It improves their quality of life. It improves what they're able to provide for their families. Now, the next one is quite a complicated one. Well, it's not complicated, actually. It just uses a complicated word, which is irrigation. Now, irrigation is a key word which simply means watering your crops. My family laugh at me when I say that I'm going to irrigate the plants and I'm watering the pot plants in the house. But that's all it means, okay? So all that water that's held in that massive reservoir that, remember, is hundreds of square miles wide can actually be used to water crops, and it can be used to support farmers in the region, okay? That in turn has huge economic benefits because if more people can grow more crops, then that's more profit that they can make, okay? And there are advantages that come from that. So what I want you guys to do now is to think back to what we've just talked through in terms of these advantages. And I'd like you to start plotting the advantages into your table. So tell me what the economic advantages are, tell me what the social advantages are, and tell me what the environmental advantages are. You might start off really simple and put economic advantage, it provides jobs. But you might want to take it a bit further by using connectives within your table to explain. Now, what I would urge you guys to do now is to pause this video, have a look at your table, go back and add things in that you can from memory to start off with, then come back to the video, rewind it, and start going back through what I've been discussing to see if you guys have missed anything that you can add into your tables in terms of the advantages on people, the advantages on the economy, and the advantages for the environment. Now, if there are things that cross over more than one category, that's absolutely fine. Copy and paste them and put them into those two categories. There's absolutely no problems with that whatsoever. Okay, push pause. Let's get that done now. Okay, hopefully you've had an opportunity to be able to fill the information into your table. So what we're going to do now then is we're going to have a look at our target question. Now, our target question says, what are the social and economic advantages of the Three Gorges Dam project? I should probably add environmental into that as well, wouldn't I? Otherwise, we're ignoring one of the strands on our tables. Now, I've set up here a series of sentence starters to get you going. So I've started it off with, there are advantages to the Three Gorges Dam project. The social advantages include, the economic advantages include, there are also environmental positives such as, and I've put their use connectives. Now, I think personally, you're not going to be successful at this unless you know what success looks like. So I've actually mocked up a model answer to this question. Okay. Now I'm going to read you through my model answer before you guys answer the question for yourself, just so that you can see what success looks like. Then you can look back at the success criteria and you can see if you can craft yourself an answer to this question based on that success criteria, based on this model answer. So it says, there are many advantages to the Three Gorges Dam project. Some of these are economic. For example, the project has created lots of jobs. Some of these were during the construction and running of the dam. Others may be in tourism as the area attracts visitors. This has a positive social effect on people as they are able to provide for their families. In addition to this, it makes travel by boat easier across the river, an economic advantage as it increases business and trade across China. There are some environmental advantages as the dam produces renewable energy, which minimises the amount of CO2 contribution to global warming. So what you can see there is a really good and succinct, simple model answer to the question. I haven't included every single advantage, okay? I could have done if I'd wanted to, but I haven't in this case. Now, what you'll notice is that I've highlighted here economic, social, and environmental, because I've mentioned at least one advantage in terms of money, the economy, one in terms of people, social, and one in terms of the environment, nature. Now, what I want to draw your attention to is how I've extended my answer. Now, I've extended my answer through phrases like, in addition to this, okay? And that's my use of connected words in order to be able to develop my responses. I also then lead from one thing onto another. So I talk about the economic advantage and I lead on to how that has a social effect on people. So effectively what I'm doing is using phrases like therefore to be able to develop my response and develop my answer. If you need to, pause this video and have another look through the model answer that's in front of you. If not, I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to go back to my previous slide and I want you to pause it on this. And I want you to pause it on this so that you can look at my sentence starters and you can have a go at the target question. Use your table that you've already created to guide you in answering the question, okay? Once you've answered that question, and if you've completed the Google form that was at the start of today's lesson, you are done for the day, okay? Remember to submit your work via Google Classrooms as opposed to via email. That makes it much easier for me to be able to keep track of the work that people have been producing. And if you've got any questions, don't forget, you can always ping me an email. Excellent Year 7. Enjoy. Any problems, let me know.